We just got a huge Quest 3 update that comes with some big improvements as well as finally unlocking some brand new features. But we also got some massive VR game news that you don't want to miss. So let's dive right into it. Now Meta released their new software update for their original Quest 3 as well as the new Quest 3S. But since it is rolling out gradually, you might not see all of these features just yet. But don't worry, you will get them eventually. Now one of the biggest changes that you will probably directly notice is the brand new Handtracking 2.3. And while we've already gotten many improvements on this over the years, that go from more precise collision detection when you put your hands together, or the reduction in the loss of tracking when you're waving your hands quickly from the left to the right, it is with this new hand tracking model that this gets taken even further. Because according to Meta, the 2.3 version should make your hand cursor more stable when you're not making any movements, as well as creating a faster response time to follow your hands correctly. And this difference can be quite significant when we watch it back in slow-mo, making this overall a very welcome upgrade, especially since this is also used in the second new feature, which is the addition of a pass-through keyboard. Now previously, your headset was already capable of tracking some very specific Bluetooth keyboard while immersed in VR, but now you can create a pass-through cutout for any keyboard that you have laying at home. That means that when a keyboard-looking object is within view and your hands are closely to it, it will show up as a representation in VR thanks to the cameras that it uses for mixed reality. And that becomes even more important when we look at the biggest new feature that comes with this update, which is the integration of Windows 11. Now you might have already seen Mark Zuckerberg show us a sneak peek of this at their yearly Meta Connect event, but now it is not a concept any longer, and instead you can now find it under your experimental features. And when unlocked, this basically lets any Quest 3 or Quest 3S owner mirror their Windows 11 PC with a single tap after just looking at it. And once connected, your PC screen will automatically turn off and replace it by a large virtual screen in front of you. And just like you're used to, you can spawn up to a total of 3 virtual monitors right in front of your eyes. Now of course, it was already possible to mirror your PC display in your Quest headset by connecting it to something like Quest Link, or by using a third-party alternative like Virtual Desktop for example. But the goal of Meta with this direct integration is that you won't need to launch any app at all. But besides all that, you might have also noticed the brand new Media Gallery app. Because beforehand, if you wanted to access your videos or photos on your headset, you would have to use one of the 2 built-in apps known as Camera or Files. But since neither of those really gave you a nice overview of your content, Meta decided to integrate a gallery app to give you easy access to all your screenshots, photos, and more. But we also had some smaller changes that came with this update that can still have quite a big impact. For example, it is now possible to send direct messages on Instagram on your Quest headset itself, meaning you can now finally continue to spam all your friends with those reels that you just found. But besides all these software updates, we also saw some new hardware released for the Meta Quest 3 headset, and that was with a brand new haptic suit from TrueGear. Now this can basically let you feel what happens inside virtual reality. And for those who don't know, haptic suits make use of these tiny motors that are built inside of it that give you direct feedback on your actions inside a game. However, most haptic suits that we saw until now were either pretty damn expensive or didn't work with the Meta Quest 3 headsets. While this new one is not only much more budget friendly, it also takes it up a level by adding in electrical impulse modules beside just your general haptic feedback motors. And these can simulate your actions to a pretty intense extent. Oh, and a nice extra is that it also has a big battery, so in case that your Quest 3 is running low on juice, you can just quickly use your haptic vest as a backup to charge it. But do keep in mind that for the time being, you will still need a PC to run the games with this. And although not all titles are directly supported, the biggest ones out there, like Half-Life Alyx for example, have all been optimized to work with this kind of hardware. So that's pretty cool. But Meta didn't stop there and still added in another secret update, because without announcing it in their patch notes, you might now also notice a big change in Horizon Worlds, which is Meta's own social VR platform. Because while beforehand, it was already possible to buy digital goods in Horizon, like for example avatar outfits or an access key to a premium world, you can now only do this by using something that they introduced as Meta Credits. So unlike stuff like Quest Cash, this can now not be used to buy hardware or accessories anymore, but just stuff in Horizon Worlds. So for those who are actually making use of this, it might become a bit more limiting in the future. But next to the huge update, we also had some crazy VR game news you don't want to miss. But before we get into that, let's have a quick word from the company that made this video possible. Because none other than Cat VR, who are known to create VR treadmills that look like they come straight out of Ready Player One, are taking VR once again to the next level. Because while we normally are limited by the space and boundary system inside our virtual reality experiences, it is Cat VR that has been creating VR treadmills that let you run, crouch, and jump without any limitation. And since their most recent version, that is known as the C2 Core, is compatible with nearly every headset, it is often also considered as the dream upgrade for any VR setup. And they even go so far that for those hardcore fans, they also have high-end models that include things like haptic feedback or a vehicle hub, making it feel even more realistic, like riding on a horse inside VR. And as a cherry on top, you can also use the code VRelity for a $130 discount on your entire purchase. So for those who are interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. And that gets us to the VR game news, with the first big one being the highly popular Skydance behemoth. Because this physics-based action title very quickly took VR by storm. And not only because it managed to pull off some insane visuals on the Quest 3 that make it look like a PC VR game from the start, it also has some satisfying combat mixed into it, and probably the most insane boss fights of any virtual reality game, making it kind of feel like the Shadow of the Colossus inside VR. But the nice thing is that you also have the possibility to take the visuals even further if you play it on PC, since this game is actually cross-buy, which makes this also for a lot of people easily one of the best VR games that has recently come out. But another awesome game that also got its full release is known as Iron Rebellion, because while this one has been in a making for quite some years, it now got a massive 1.0 update that finally takes it out of early access on both Quest and PC VR. And in here, you will have to choose your personal mech fighter from the 6 new available types that all have their own strengths and abilities. But on top of that, you also have lots of customization options so that you can change them specifically to your needs. Because in this game, you will be using these gigantic mechs to take down the enemy teams while trying to stand your ground in one of the many overall maps. But by far the coolest thing is that next to the highly interactive cockpit, which lets you feel like you are truly in control of these robotic beasts, is that somehow this entire game is made by just 2 developers and a very driven community behind it, which makes it even crazier how this game can feel so polished and crisp to look at. But we also got a new title for the Quest headsets that takes a big spin on the classic pinball game, and that one is known as Bounce Arcade. Because here, you will be dropped into the machines yourself, where you will have to try your best to survive and rank up the highest score. However, the nice thing is that there are multiple different environments, as well as some new and old school mechanics like multi-balls that can quickly rank up the difficulty. But what I liked about it most is that while you are playing, you can also unlock some mini games or events that will drastically change your gameplay. And since you will also be hitting everything with your own hands, it also gives you a lot more precise control to where everything is going. So overall, I think this is a great take on an old-fashioned game, but then specifically made for virtual reality, while still adding in enough features to keep things interesting. But next, we have an upcoming VR application known by the name as Rival that might completely change your VR experience. Because this app lets you share and explore everything that goes from 3D game recordings to even complete 360-degree VR videos. But besides just jumping into all the cool things that you might see on the homepage, you can also choose to favorite them so that you can watch them later, or even share some of your own, which makes this a complete new type of social media, but then for virtual reality. However, as of recording, the app is not out yet, but you can enter their waitlist, which I will link below, that also gives you a chance to get access to it for free. Either way, I think this app has a lot of potential, and I absolutely love to explore the many different things that other users create and upload. So I'm looking forward to where the team takes it. But a complete other game that got released is known as Clone Drone in the Hyperdome. Now this is best described as a roguelike arena brawler where you fight it out against lots of different enemies and these so-called loop runners, with your ultimate goal is to work your way up and eventually take on the captain in the Hyperdome himself. But while the game definitely stands out from some other VR titles with its voxel-based graphics, it actually has some really cool combat mechanics to it that can go from the many different weapons that you can wield to the precision of your attacks on your targets. And all that while mixing in some great humor and an addictive gameplay loop that gives you just the right amount of challenge much to keep you coming back for more. And since this is technically a sequel to their already successful flat screen game, I am somehow still pleasantly surprised by how well this translates in virtual reality. But another cool title for those board game lovers out there is known as Tabletop Simulator, because this PC VR app that you can use with your Quest 3 will let you play some of the most known real-life games inside VR, with one of the greatest examples and favorites of mine personally being known as Medara, since this is a massive RPG with hundreds of hours of stories and dungeon crawling to go through, and where all your actions actually have a big impact on how the narrative progresses. And since these games in here are all near perfect copies of the real-life board games themselves, it also becomes a great way to play them with your friends if you don't live close by. So definitely check out the game of Medara if you haven't already. And next up, we have a new unique quest game known as Dino Hap, with this upcoming title taking place in both virtual reality and mixed reality as well. And in here, you will start off by getting your own AI companion named Puck that will support you throughout the game, because your main mission is to raise these baby dinosaurs until they are full-grown adults, while at the same time also restoring their prehistoric habitat. This goes from feeding them to taking care of the surrounding vegetation and much more. But there will also be some challenges along the way. These can go from storms to even volcanic eruptions that all have their own effect on the dinosaur ecosystem. And it is also cool to see the huge scale of some of these dinosaurs in VR, while the game also tries to educate the player at the same time. And depending on when you're watching this, you might still be able to get the pre-order discount if you're getting it. But we also got a brand new VR experience known as Gargoyle Doyle. And besides the difficult to pronounce name, this is also not your standard VR game at all. But instead, it is an interactive VR comedy that is voiced by none other than Jason Isaacs. And it has also already received multiple prizes since it was first created. But in here, you'll be taken on a 40-minute journey through the life of the statue named Doyle, and who is having also a tough self-reflection after his long life on this planet. With the main thing about this experience is that the story overall is just really funny. And on top of that, the developers will also soon add a mixed reality mode to it in their next update to complete the game fully. But we also got a brand new sports game known as Backyard Bocce, and this is based on the ancient game of skill, where you have to throw a stone ball as close to the target as possible, with the overall gameplay feeling a bit similar to something like Walkabout Mini Golf, because in here, you'll be challenging other players on one of the many different fields while trying to reach as close to your end goal as possible, and with loads of customization options to unlock and a great competitive side to it. I'm looking forward to see where the developer can take this game. But that's not all, because there are also some other complete free VR games for your Quest headset. So click on the video that you see on screen right now to make sure you don't miss out. And of course, stay awesome.